Good morning everyone and welcome back to projectCD.Chronicles. Let's start the video with this iconic image of the Commodore 64. But wait, yes, we're looking at a sort of emulator, but specifically this is the Basic 64JS emulator. So we have an almost complete emulation of the Commodore 64's BASIC rewritten in JavaScript. Print, project, CD.Chronicles, and voila! If you're interested in this video, we're going to analyze all its aspects, its unique features, its limitations, and toward the end, we'll try installing it locally. Stay with me until the end. Now let's take a step back and we're on the site joystick-and-cursor-keys.github.io. And as you can see, basic64.js is, in this case, a website, but also a GitHub project that aims to revive the experience, as we've seen here, of the Commodore 64's BASIC, but reimagined through a JavaScript emulator. Obviously, there are two versions here. We use the desktop one, but it's also possible to use the tabless version. And of course, welcome and feel free to join online during my walkabout JS. And then it continues with a brief explanation. Of course, in the 1980s, we didn't have PCs, but what we had were microcomputers. The Commodore 64 is an 8-bit microcomputer, and the special thing about it was that when you turned it on, you were taken straight into BASIC. That's it. And that was all. This led many people to learn how to program using BASIC. And the goal, as it says here, is that this emulator tries to recreate that experience by making BASIC available, obviously today, especially in the browser. Well, what else can I say? What can it do? It's basically an authentic experience. Basic 64JS is a JavaScript implementation of the Commodore 64's BASIC, designed to work in the browser and, so to speak, recreate the look and feel of a real 64. Although, as we'll see, it does have some limitations. It's not a machine emulator, and that's important. It doesn't run machine code, but it's optimized for running and editing BASIC code. And time permitting on YouTube, we'll also take a look at what a demo disk is. Of course, among its various features, as we can see in the wiki documentation, it includes advanced support for PIX and POX to emulate the VIC graphics chip, and it also offers an extension to expand some of the available BASIC commands. I'd like to remind you that back in the days of the Commodore 64, in order to plot a pixel on the screen, you had to use some small mathematical formulas. Same thing if you wanted to play sounds or do other things. Of course, other things as well. I remember, for example, swapping or other small operations that were simpler on other computers with more advanced versions of BASIC, whereas here you had to use a few little tricks. Limitless creativity. Code can do anything you can imagine, because that's really the main takeaway message. Of course, even if the output is limited to what the Commodore 64's screen can display. That's all there is to it, really. For now, there's still no support for disk drives or anything like that. What else can I say? Well, I've already mentioned it. There are several versions, including an experimental one that's still under development. There are additional features too, like the power menu, which you can see here, and the option to automatically enable extended behavior, and even a panic command to handle errors. What can I say? Commodore's 64 BASIC emulator is undoubtedly, in my opinion, a fun way to relive 1980s programming without needing a real Commodore 64 right in your browser. It's true that we also have online emulators like Vice and others that offer a full experience. But this project definitely deserves attention. Obviously, before checking out any demos, you need to go to its main GitHub page, Joystick and Cursor Keys Basic J64, where you can clone the entire repository to your drive. As you can see here, I've already done this in the directory using git clone GitHub joystick, and we can then directly access all the work that's been done on the emulator. Obviously, though, there's one more small step. You'll need to install a web server like XAMPP because it will need to access the files locally, but we'll look at that later on. By the way, the site has two main aspects: a wiki that gives us more in-depth information, especially about what we've already discussed in this section, and also we've actually already seen this. A section with examples where you can test out the different features that have been implemented. In this objective section, it's important to look at some unique features as well as some differences. First of all, it can be run, so executed, in any modern browser that supports some of its features. Obviously, there's no need for installation. It's optimized for editing and using basic programs, and the screen emulator is also designed to let you use graphics. So VIC2 emulation, poke/pick, and sprite in test mode. By the way, it also emulates the full set of PetCI characters and, moreover, here you'll also find emulation of PetCI with control characters. The compatibility is 99% when it comes to BASIC, just to be clear. It adds what are basically modern features, with a classic look and feel, and as for the browser, it gives us about 5 or 6 megabytes, depending on the type of browser, for local storage of our programs using save and load. All right, obviously before we continue, let's take a look at a session with some examples where we can actually see them. Here, it basically shows us a simple snake game in action. And it also demonstrates how this program works by saving it to a part of the browser's local storage. First of all, let's look at this example, Tic-Tac-Talk. I click play, and here it puts it directly on mine because, as you can see, I choose X. What's your move? Number 1. Obviously, the computer goes here. What's your move? Number 9. What's your move? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Number 8. Let's see. What's your move? Number 3. And then we keep going here and end up with a tie. All right, we can still look at another one. Let's see if it can do 6-4-7-3-8. Obviously, it's not supported, but I wanted to show you this case because it emulates what BASIC is, but it doesn't emulate everything related to machine language. However, BASIC itself has been emulated almost 100%. This part is mainly related to the VIC, and so this, as you can see, is the emulation as far as the graphics page from the VIC2 is concerned, of course. And here it brings us to what is obviously a Mandelbrot set. So, through the BASIC program, which here is obviously much faster, it gives us the information for the Mandelbrot fractal. Obviously, here I have the cut. Let's go all the way to the end. Of course, here we've finished, and as usual, we see the ready prompt. By the way, I was reading while I was waiting that there are actually some keys. Use F9 or Tab to enter the power menu. And here we can press F9 or Tab, which lets you use an additional menu to, let's say, copy our BASIC program from the clipboard, import it, view the virtual disk, go back to BASIC, and so on. You can use F9, and you could also do it correctly with Tab. For example, let's press F9 and take a look at the BASIC program. We can also, for instance, renumber the lines, remove spaces, compress it, strip out any unnecessary characters, or view the listing. And this is actually the listing of the Mandelbrot program as it's intended. So, and by the way, I notice here that Turbo Border 0, Mode 2 per 1 already have some extensions compared to the original Basic. Let's say we can still do remove space. Let's see. If I press F9 and do a list, it actually removed all the spaces from the program. Let's take a closer look at a few more of them. With 7, we can do what is basically our reset, going back to normal. In this case, it's neither turn mode nor panic mode, but we have the extensions on 10 print hello, and in this case, save test.prg. And it basically saves the program to the local disk storage, which we can then load with S, do a list, and as you can see, it's loaded directly into the local storage of our browser. So after clearing the screen, we delete the program, then we load the directory with the usual $sign. In this case, we have the load command. As you can see here, load our program, which gets loaded, and obviously it's nothing more than our old print hello. Let's exit, and I wanted to show you this last part, which is the multicolor and high-res color, where it definitely uses an extended mode for colors. And in this part, the VIC2 is definitely emulated quite well. Now, as far as sprays go, there will probably still be some things to fix. Anyway, basically, let's say this part is well done. It's a project that is obviously still in progress, so it needs to be given time to become fully working and functional. By the way, there are other functions as well. We have 5, and there are actually several different ones. Change menu, documentation, turbo mode, immersive mode. I'm not sure what that means. What I was more interested in was checking out the extended commands that can be used at startup. Okay, and so you can activate it with on or through the xon command. Perfect. And then it gives us everything related to the documentation, which of course just redirects us to the browser's own page. All right, I wanted to try one more experiment. I'm going to launch it in desktop mode. Obviously, I go to the main section, use the clipboard, do what's called the to, obviously the paste program. So this is all a part that, let's say, I had done before and I took it. I'll explain it to you right away. It's from Retroprogramming Italia. At this point, it's the first time I'm doing this with you. It should be all set, back to basic, and I should then have the basic code listing itself, which obviously I don't have here. Let's try repeating the same operation. So instead of back to basic, I type ready. And in fact, we now have our basic code listing displayed. What are we doing right now? We run it, and it's exactly the code I presented, no less than on Retroprogramming Italia, where we have a simulation of a series of photons being captured by a black hole, and then, of course, interpreted at the event horizon. Obviously, it's very cool. It's a unique simulation. I wanted to do one more test where we select the virtual hard disk. In this case, we have the load file option, and as you can see, our program is there. So we're going to load it. It's already listed, and maybe we'll try to check out a few more small features. So there's also the possibility to create multiple virtual disks and import them. Here, I downloaded what is the demo disk and basically imported it inside. What do you need to do at this step? Obviously, we have virtual disks where you can then load programs. But before that, you need to go through the import process and go to section 8, where, let's say, we import the virtual disk and then load it from there. Additionally, with virtual disks, we also have the further option to do disk swapping. As you can see, there are quite a few disks. Basically, it works as if you have multiple drives for the same disk, because here it doesn't load what's on load 8, so on the same disk, but it's as if it loads drive 8, 9, and so on. So we have the ability to save multiple disks in memory. And in fact here, going back to the menu, all we're really doing is loading the different programs. We can load another one as well, related to what is the pesky. Here, clearly, you don't need what would obviously be the 8. Of course, here it also simulates the presence of all the pesky characters. Obviously, it's a well-made tool, but it still needs to be improved in some areas, especially regarding the sprites, which we've seen still have some flaws. For sure, the sound part will be emulated in the future, and who knows, maybe one day the machine language part will be emulated as well. What else can I say? I'll focus a bit more on this last part, where we refer to the classic, let's say, programs. Well, commands, those that are part of the Commodore 64's BASIC. And then we also have a whole section about the extended commands, where we've already talked about on and off directory, a part about debugging, and then, let's say, other features related to graphics, which actually we saw in the first program where it used mode, color, and so on. Test screen command, pen position, bitmap scroll, then clear, pen, which is probably supposed to be plot, and then it has extended functions specifically for using lines, circles, and a whole set of sprites. I'll definitely come back to this topic because these features definitely work, and maybe here there was just a small data entry mistake. So as you can see, that was just a small mistake, but here the sprites work perfectly. As you can see, really, really nice. Let's also take a look at one of the sprites here. This one is a walking sprite. So, hats off. Really, kudos to this implementation when it comes to the Commodore 64 Basic Online Sprites. Well, what else can I say? I'll leave you with this part about the Commodore 64 Online. By the way, this is version 0.80p5 because it's experimental. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you here again soon on projectCD.Chronicles for a new video with the Commodore 64. Thanks, everyone.